And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to the final episode for the week of Talkin' Bible. Last one of the week with Aaron Waters.
I love Fridays.
You love Fridays?
I love Fridays.
It is actually
we
Friday.
are recording on
We're
a Friday.
recording on a Friday. And
this is brilliant.
And this is Friday afternoon. So the end of the week, as you're listening to this, if you're listening in real time, it's Friday. So we are going to finish out our week talking about some challenging words with Jesus where he's kind of rebuking people who are being unfruitful or look the part but aren't legit.
Yes, it's an interesting passage, this one.
All right, take us into it.
So this appears twice. So there's Matthew 7, 15 to 20.
Which is part of the Sermon on the Mount.
Sermon on the Mount. And Luke 6, 43 to 45.
Okay. Also part of the Sermon on the Plain in Luke's Gospel, but it's a shortened version of the Sermon on the Mount in Luke 6. Yep.
So I'll start in Matthew. I think it's kind of the more thorough one.
Yes, it is. Yep.
So Jesus says, "Watch out for false prophets. They will come to you dressed like sheep, but inside they are hungry wolves. You'll be able to tell them by the fruit they bear. You don't find grapes growing on thorn bushes, do you? Or on figs, or figs on thistles? Well, in the same way, good trees produce good fruit, and bad trees produce bad fruit. Actually, good trees can't produce bad fruit, nor can bad ones produce good fruit. Every tree that doesn't produce good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So you must recognize them by their fruits."
All right. So we've got wolves, we've got sheep producing fruit here. We're mixing metaphors.
Yes.
We're mixing agrarian metaphors here, aren't we?
Yes. So yes, the first one, sheep in wolves' clothing.
Sheep in wolves'
I don't think sheep in wolves' clothing. No, wolves in
sheep's clothing. Yep.
I always why don't I get that mixed up? That's a weird one to get mixed up.
Yeah. You think of Hansel and Gretel, is it? No, Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
The wolf being the grandmother.
Yes.
Yes, that's probably based on this kind of mentality.
Yes, I think this is a metaphor that I think has survived quite and thrived quite well. In our
well
society.
beyond the Bible. We totally know what this means in secular language, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by analogy, it's the same with trees, that you can tell the difference because not necessarily by the look of the tree, but by the quality of the fruit that it produces.
Yeah, that's right. That's when you'll see the difference, Jesus is saying. Yeah. So you got to look to the fruit. And we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, is that the whole analogy of fruit is one that is picked up time and again in the Bible.
Yeah,
I did a search. You did a search.
I did a search for fruit because I thought, I'm sure they mentioned this kind of symbolism somewhere else, and I was drowning.
It's everywhere. Yeah, exactly. And it makes sense in an agricultural society where they're used to eating fruit that had gone rotten or infested or whatever. They would totally. There's the whole Jeremiah, rotten figs and bad figs, rotten figs and good figs, and that's an upended mentality there. Jeremiah says, the Lord says through Jeremiah that the good figs are the ones who have been exiled to Babylon, and the bad figs are the ones who have been left behind, which is the opposite of what you would expect. Yeah, because they thought, oh, we get left behind, we weren't sent away, but no, they were the ones who ultimately that were left behind, that were the bad fruit. Yeah. The good fruit God was protecting by sending them to Babylon to protect them. So, this, as I said, this analogy is used time and again. And, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand what Jesus is saying, do you? Yeah. Fruitfulness is meaning what we produce in life. And does it add value? Is it nutritious? Is it good for others? Does it bring the kingdom to other people's lives? Yes or no? I think that's what Jesus is getting at here. People can look the part, but eventually... they can't. Maybe they can hide their wolfiness in sheep's clothing, but eventually their wolfiness will come out. Yep. Eventually their abuse of others, their desire for control of others, their desire to consume others will come out, and that will be the fruit that will come out. Yep.
And of course, whenever I see them talking about fruit, I'm immediately thinking of Galatians 5.
Galatians 5, yep.
The fruit of the Spirit. So, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Yep.
It's passage, I think I mentioned last time I was on here, it's a passage that I've memorized out of order, but I've
Doesn't matter what
memorized
order they are.
But it's so handy just to be
Yes.
able to think, like, just to be in a situation and then think, something feels off here. Let me just go through the fruits of the Spirit.
That. Yes.
There's a lack of kindness here.
Yes. Very
Or,
good.
there's someone's being impatient.
here.
That's a sign
boom.
That's a sign of something.
Ooh,
you
that'll
know?
preach. Have you said that on the podcast? That didn't land, but not in my mind.
I think I talked about the passage, but I don't think I said about that.
I've
It's-
never thought of using it as which is it's what Jesus is saying. Look at the fruit.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I picked
How
that
have
up.
I missed that?
I
for
picked that up
4
from a
years?
preacher.
Oh, that's
some time ago.
gold.
But
so that works two ways. That's a two-sided sword because it makes me reflect on my own heart and go, where am I producing these things?
Yeah.
But as a tool to look at another person, which is that almost seems harsh to us to do that, and yet Jesus is saying, "Hey, nothing wrong with that. You'll recognize a person who's claiming to be a sheep should be producing sheepy fruit,
Yep.
and if they're not, you need to recognize they're a wolf."
Yep.
And you're saying to look at the behavior of what's being demonstrated and run it through that filter of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Wow.
There's one before that I haven't memorized, and I don't want to, but maybe I should because it's got the negatives.
Okay. Oh yes, Galatians,
in
the works of the
verses
flesh.
before it.
Yes.
Sexual immorality, impurity, lustful pleasures, idolatry, sorcery, hostility, quarreling, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambition, dissension, division, enviness,
And the like.
drunkenness,
That's it.
wild parties, and other sins like these.
And other things. Yeah, as if it's not an exhaustive. By the way, it's not an exhaustive list. Yeah,
I think to some extent neither of them are exhaustive.
Yes.
But it's still useful tools to sort of pick up
Yeah.
and say, oh, okay, something's, there's something good here or there's something not so good
Yeah.
here. I know even the opposite works. Some people which I think are wolves in wolves' clothing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then they'll say something that makes me stop and think, actually, there's some peace and kindness to what they've just said.
It's not like there's
And it
it's
pulls
not
me
like
up.
because the reality is we are all sheep and wolves.
Yeah.
We're all on a journey of becoming less wolfy and more sheepy. We've never used these verbs in that way before, but we that's what we're becoming. That's what we should become. That's what it means to become like Jesus, is to become more like a sheep and less like a wolf. So it's not like we dismiss everybody, and it's not like you're either 100% wolf or you're 100% sheep. Now, obviously, there are some who are 100% wolves, but the majority of people, even those that these ministers and pastors we read about that are falling, do some horrible things, but that doesn't mean that everything they ever did was wrong.
Yeah.
It meant there was a major area of brokenness and sin in their world that was controlling them, but they can still produce some fruit. But the challenge for us is to recognize that we should treat it like it's like there's absolutes. We should go, hey, I want to be a person who produces good fruit, not bad fruit. And James uses another metaphor for this and James riffs off the Sermon on the Mount a lot.
Yep.
But he uses a metaphor where he talks about salt water and fresh water.
Okay.
And he says, brothers and sisters, should salt water and fresh water they don't come from the same spring. So he says, and that shouldn't be the way you speak. The way you live shouldn't be salt water and fresh water from the same place. And if you do it mathematically, you don't need very much salt in water to make it salt water. You don't need to have 80% salt to be salt water. It's a very small, I can't remember the portion, but it's a very small portion. In other words, he's saying and Jesus says a little bit of yeast gets into the dough and corrupts everything. These are the principles Jesus is using. So it's a call to all of us to want to be more sheepy and less wolfy and to allow that to happen. And it's the way that happens is not by trying harder, I'm going to be a more godly person. It's actually by focusing on Jesus and planting ourselves in the good soil. And as we do that, as we stay close to him, because it's his fruit. It's not our fruit. Yep. When I'm loving, it's not Rohan being loving, it's Christ's love in me manifesting itself. That's why it's a fruit. It's not it's not a work.
Yeah.
Galatians 5, that list you had immediately before that, the one you just read out, says the works of the flesh, not the fruit of the flesh. Contrast the works of the flesh and the fruit of the Spirit.
That's interesting.
Do a little study on that in your own time.
Yeah.
And find it. So
Yeah.
it's almost like this hard bitterness, the anger, the drunkenness, all those horrible lists. That is work. It's not pleasant.
No.
But if you plant yourself in good soil, or to use Jesus' other analogy in John 15, where he says, "I'm the vine and you're the branches. If you remain in me, you'll produce good fruit." And that's the key. Stay close to Jesus, and the life will become more sheepy.
Yep.
The fruit will be more sheepy. I've never used those metaphors before. The sheep will be more. The fruit will be sheepy.
Yep.
Yeah. What else you got there?
That's I suppose what I'm. The thing that was really on my mind, we've already covered, which is that it feels very black and white.
Yes.
On first view, that there's good and there's bad, and it's like it's a bit harsh to sort of categorize people like
to
that.
be so binary and
yes, and yet, but it's like we've said, it's about acknowledging that there are those forces pulling us in those two different directions, and it's about directions, not so much about
absolutes.
Absolutes.
Yeah. And Paul will use language like he calls it the flesh.
Yeah.
He'll say, "Walk in the spirit, and you will not fulfill the lusts of the flesh." So how do I avoid being wolfy? Well, it's to walk in the spirit.
Yeah.
And the result of walking in the spirit was all be more sheepy. So that's to hang out with Jesus, to focus on him, to do the things that connect us with him, that we abide in his vine, and we will eventually produce more good fruit and less bad fruit. And I would think that even agriculturally, you could take what Jesus is saying. He's stretching the metaphor here to make a point, but not every piece of fruit on every tree is going to be good. You will have some trees that will produce a mixture. I think that would make sense. It's I pick strawberries or pick grapes or whatever. You're always going to have some that aren't as healthy as others. They've got damaged for whatever reason. So I think it's more the general principle of you're looking for fruitfulness in your life, and you're looking for fruitfulness in others' lives. So he's trying to say, don't just accept people on face value because they look charismatic or they look like, they're so holy, or they've got it together, or they're the most influential people. The world is full of train wrecks of people who...
I'm chuckling, but I don't mean it.
No,
you know what I mean?
So true. It's like, you just open up the news and another famous person has, been caught for some kind of child trafficking or something, and yet we promote these people, put them on pedestals, and that's what Jesus is getting at. Avoid self-promotion and let your fruit do the talking for you. Yeah. I think that's what Jesus is getting at here. The last thing I thought worth mentioning is because he talks about, out of a good heart, out of a treasury of a good heart, things come forward. So, we say, the heart's nice, but to them, the heart was the center of their being, their mind, their will, their emotions, everything came out of the heart. So Jesus is pretty much saying, and he says elsewhere, it's not what goes into the mouth that makes you unclean, it's what comes out of your mouth that makes you unclean. So Jesus was going, what are you storing up in your heart? Are you storing up good things? The Apostle Paul in Philippians 4 says, whatever is good and pure and excellent and praiseworthy, think about these things. Yeah. So that's what stores up good heart. If you want to have a good heart and produce good fruit, fill it with good things. Fill your heart with good things, and the end result will be good fruit coming out, or more good fruit and less bad fruit.
Yep. And drink from the freshwater spring.
Water.
I really like that that analogy of the fresh water and the salt water.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
They don't come from the same place.
No, that's right. Yeah, and you don't need much. Let's think about it. You don't need much saltiness to destroy good water, and I know that's in real life, but in our lives too. How many people do so much good work, and then one significant act of saltiness can undermine their entire credibility, their value in the world, their respect they earn. It's hard to get that stuff back. It's not impossible, but it's hard to get it back once it's lost. So there's a call there to stay close to Jesus and keep producing good fruit and let the fresh water flow out of us. For sure.
Very good.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for being with us this
Thank you
week.
very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our rants.
Oh, it was always good fun. All right. Thanks. And thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you on the next episode. See you
Enjoy
then.
your weekend.